Hello, my fellow readers. I Dark Symphony 777 with fanfiction review number 500. I have done 500 reviews over my long time of doing these videos. I feel a sense of accomplishment, even though barely anyone watched these videos. Don't worry. When I retire, everyone, I mean no one will miss me. But I'll still have my friends. All the friends I made from the people who did watch this. I thank all of you. Thank you. And I'm shedding a single solitary manly tear. Anyway, back to the review. As always, I'll be leaving a link to the stories in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and finally, this is my opinion. My opinion of this video, of these stories, is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, the stories I am doing a review of are the entire Silent Ponyville series by Sam Rose. And these are a series of My Little Pony and Silent Hill crossover fanfictions. And I know these stories are old. Like, this is 10th of July, 2011. These are positively ancient stories in terms of FIM fiction standards. I know the site came out in like late 2010, if I remember right. And so these stories kind of stuck out for like really, really, really the right ways. There are 6 stories. There is Silent Ponyville 1, Too Shy for a Rainbow, Silent Ponyville 2, Study of the Mind Delve, The Rainbow Surprise, and Silent Ponyville 3. And these stories are all connected together. Very one less than the others. There is also Silent Ponyville Reunion, which is a canon spinoff written by another author, but that story is not complete yet, so I'm not going to review that one. If it ever actually finishes, I will review that one. But until then, yeah, I'm not gonna touch that one. So let's get started with the plot. What is the plot of Silent Ponyville? Well, in order to do the best way to describe Silent Ponyville, I might as well set the stage by describing what exactly Silent Hill is, because Silent Hill is not the easiest thing to describe. So, for those of you who don't know, Silent Hill is a horror game franchise published and developed by Konami. It was actually seen as the main competitor to Resident Evil. Both of these horror survival franchises went in different directions in how they did in terms of presentation. Resident Evil mainly focused on the gameplay aspect. They focused on the survival aspect, where you basically had to space everything out and you pick your fights and try and make everything last as long as possible in between huge gulps of traversing and figuring everything out. I did a let's play that game the first game, so you know what I'm talking about. But Resident Evil was never really the bastion of storytelling, which makes sense because Resident Evil's whole stick is that it borrows heavily from B horror movies. They're meant to be very cheesy and more over the top than anything. And you can actually see that over the course of the entire franchise until Resident Evil 6 kind of just shot in the foot. Yes, I will even defend Resident Evil 5 to an extent because it's over the top and it's still just very goofy. Silent Hill, on the other hand, Silent Hill focused more on the abstract. It focused on the storytelling, the characters, the horror aspect of the survival horror genre. There is still survival parts of it because you still have to survive, but Silent Hill wanted to differentiate itself from Resident Evil, so that's how it did it. It focused more on the symbolism and the storytelling, both narrative wise as well as visual storytelling. And Silent Ponyville definitely does take a lot of after itself. So, in Silent Ponyville 1, the story actually has Pinkie Pie having a series of extremely dangerous nightmares. And she's losing sleep over it. So she decides to go to Twilight Sparkle, ask her, I'm having nightmares. I don't know what I can do. Please help me. Twilight decides to look into her dreamscape to kind of. She has a book called Dreams, a Psychological Understanding, because I actually brain fart. And decides to look into her dreams to see what kind of treatment she needs. She sees some of the horrible stuff she's been seeing. Probably most notably in this story, particularly, she sees the events of Cupcakes happen. One of our nightmares has been the events of Cupcakes, where Pinkie goes mad and starts carving Rainbow Dash up into cupcake pieces. You know, that honestly, all the nightmares freak Twilight out, and she comes across a spell, the only spell she could think of to help Pinkie, called the Mind Elf. However, when she casts the spell on Pinkie, Pinkie is taken to the other world. I'm gonna refer to both versions of Silent Ponyville as the other world. So both the fog version and also the decaying rust covered version, when the siren plays. Pinkie ends up going there. She doesn't know what's going on. All she has is a lantern, the little I can't remember what she has in this story. Sorry, I'm actually very tired right now. I can't remember what Pinkie has, and the little thing that allows her to hear when the monster is coming and all that. And a hope and a dream. Just go to her home, see what she can find, everything. And so we get this very, very small journey of Pinkie going across various parts of Ponyville, this fog covered Ponyville, trying to find out, one, where anyone is, and two, try to figure out what's going on in her mindscape. And as she travels across this world, she starts getting memories to her childhood, and realizing that she's actually purposely blocked out a lot of stuff from her childhood. Well, not a lot of stuff. One particular moment where, and this is going to spoil this. I actually kind of have to spoil this. I'm not going to do it for Ponyville 2 or 3, but don't worry, there's a reason for it. In Silent Ponyville 1 specifically, Pinkie's source of traumatic experience is when she was a kid. She had a sister named Bellamina. So this also, I think this is also the story that kind of that did the whole Pinkie being related to Octavia sort of thing. You know, the grayscale pony, the gray fur pony that plays the big cello and also likes to hang out with DJ Vinyl Scratch. I think this is the first story that kind of did the whole they're related sort of deal. But in this story, Pinkie's trauma comes from the fact that as a kid, she took her sister Bellamina to this mysterious cult named the Cult. The guy's nameless. Who wanted to treat Pinkie and her sister to a party. However, once the guy brought them to like the cave, he locked Pinkie up and then proceeded to physically carve Bellamina and torture and kill her, and then eventually with the intent of eating parts of her body. And he even makes like a little cupcake that's filled with her body parts to Pinky because she starts starving, and she basically eats a bite, and she's just completely traumatized over the fact that she basically ate her sister. And then as Nicole is about getting ready to start torturing her, he gets arrested by the cops. They save her, but but she was so traumatized from the events of that happening that as she grew up, she basically blocked it all out of her mind, she and it's been internalized for so long that the nightmares stem from the fact that the trauma is actually starting to break into her dreamscape from just being stuck there so long. And that plays into a part in like all the monsters that she comes across throughout the story. I'll talk about that in a bit in later because there's a very specific reason I have to bring this up later. So eventually, Pinky manages to finally overcome her trauma. She remembers everything that happened. She confronts her trauma, and she manages to move past it. Under the promise, she tells Twilight to her face, "Don't use that spell again. Don't. No, Pink. No. But Pink, no. Don't use that spell. Twilight, I love you. I love you like a sister. Pinky, you're older than me. Yeah, but don't use the spell again. Okay? Okay. Okay. Now in comes Too Shy for a Rainbow, where basically Fluttershy wants to try and confess her feelings to Rainbow Dash. It's a very side story sort of deal because there's a side story, but it's meant to set up key specific parts of Silent Ponyville 2, which are establishing that Rainbow and Fluttershy do fall in love. They do try the date thing. Sorry. And also establish that Pinky, is still carrying the memories of what happened during the events. And that parlays into Silent Ponyville 2, where Fluttershy starts getting all these nightmares from an unknown source. So, which causes Rainbow to try to drag Fluttershy to Twilight. They run into Pinky. Pinkie Pie hears that Fluttershy is having nightmares, starts thinking back to the first story, and goes, oh no, not again. So all three go to Twilight. Pinky basically tells her, said, "Don't use this spell." It's like, I'll try not to use the spell. She does the whole thing she does with Fluttershy to Pinky. She did with Pinky to Fluttershy. Realizes the mind delve spell that sent Pinky to the other world is the only thing she can really do. Pinky's like, "No, don't do that." It's like, I don't really have a choice. Come on, Pinky. And so Pinky agrees to let Twilight use the mind delve under the condition that that she needs to link Fluttershy, Pinky, and Rainbow Dash all in once, so that way all of them can go on the journey together. Twilight does it. They all get sent to the other world. However, all three of them get separated because the other world, they don't like when people are together. They really don't. It's like, nope, we're gonna stay together. The world's like, nope, fuck that. I ain't letting you cheat. You ain't gaming the system. And Fluttershy has to traverse the other world by herself. Granted, both Rainbow and Pinky they also have to go their own paths because they apparently get separated too. However, we don't know what happened to them. I mean, I assume that with Pinky, she's probably being hunted by her cupcake self because the cupcake self actually just randomly appears periodically when they're talking to Pinky. But we eventually find that that Fluttershy was very much abused by her father, Lance, in Cloudsdale because of the simple fact that Fluttershy murdered her mom. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. No, Fluttershy wouldn't do that. It's like, in the context of the story, it makes sense. Let me explain. So, Fluttershy's mom was dealing with an incurable disease, and her father, Lance, was desperately trying to cure her. One day, as Fluttershy was gonna bring her mom for dinner, she sees her mom playing with a knife. And she's off her rockers at this point. She gives the knife to Fluttershy. It's like, Fluttershy, dear, I have a way to cure my disease. And Fluttershy's like, what's the cure? And she basically asks Fluttershy, I want you. The cure is, I want you to give that knife. I want you to hit me with it. Fluttershy's completely, very cautious about this. Like, but it's a knife. Looks like you might get hurt. It's like, you dare question your mom? And the mom actually guilt trips Fluttershy into basically stabbing her with a knife under the possibility. It's like, do you dare disappoint your mother? The whole disappointed mom thing. And so Fluttershy, in her panic, starts stabbing the mom with the knife. And, at first the mom basically tells her, keep going, keep going. And then she eventually dies. And Fluttershy, immediately after just completely freezes up to the fact that she basically killed her mother. And then comes Lance, sees the whole thing, and starts basically physically attacking Fluttershy. Oh, because in his mind, she killed the mother in cold blood. And so over the course of Fluttershy's childhood, he would drown her, he would break her wings, he would punish her, he would take a doll and rip it apart and say, you will learn how to sew perfectly. And even forcefully made her, like, psychologically tormented her about cults, to the point where it's kind of implied that she actually became a lesbian because of it. It's really bad stuff. And eventually, she does tell Rainbow Dash about this. Fluttershy confronts the father, and some words are tossed around, and eventually they go their separate ways. With Fluttershy eventually learning to deal with remembering her trauma and dealing with it, and basically they separate. Now you wonder, why am I not going that in depth? Because there's a reason. Then we got these two spinoffs: Study of the Mind of, where Twilight. This takes place after Silent Ponyville reunion. For a rundown of the reunion, it's basically the same thing. It's just Lance is the one who goes to the other world, Fluttershy's father. I don't know much about that story, so don't quote me. I'm just saying that Lance was the one in that story that kind of went to the other world. And Twilight's just completely confused over, like, what the fuck is this spell? Like, I don't even know what this spell is. So she goes to Canterlot because she has to go to Magical Unicorn sort of deal. Evaluation. It's actually right there. Evaluation. She goes to Canterlot. She tries to find out about the author of the book, Magus V Dark Arts. She tells Celestia about what happened. Celestia asks Twilight, it's like, well, use this spell on me. It's like, I want it. It's like, it's me. What do you expect? They basically use the spell. It's completely different. No. Celestia uses the spell on Twilight, and they just basically go down memory lane and find out that Twilight has written fan fiction. Because of course she did. It's like, even like a stealth reference to Mary Sue, Lieutenant Mary Sue. I wonder what a pony version of Mary Sue would be called. I don't know. Twilight's immensely confused about the whole thing. Over the fact that, wait, why this doesn't seem that bad? Why did it work differently with Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie? Luna agrees to look into it, and Celestia is like, senses something amiss. Like there's more at play than meets the eye, which leads to the Rainbow Surprise, which basically deals with Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy getting married. So it's basically like a typical story of Rainbow Dash acting suspicious, Fluttershy and Rarity, because of course Rarity has to get involved with drama. Oh, um, my mind's thought. My thoughts are empty. I turned into Quaishi. Okay, back to this. Uh, Fluttershy is convinced that Rainbow doesn't love her anymore. Rainbow reveals that she's actually doing all this stuff. I did a part in the first chapter that basically has Fluttershy and Rarity kind of watching Rainbow Dash, and she's like looking at paper, and she's with Roseluck, and then they see them kiss. Turns out Rainbow was actually helping Roseluck with the play, and part of the play actually has them kissing. So very typical, kind of fall drama sort of deal, and it's very cheesy, but it does eventually go. They get married. We find out that Lance is actually forgiven Fluttershy, and it's like wants to try and be there for her. Got it again. That more comes down to like what happened in Reunion, which is not complete yet. So I don't know what's gonna happen. All that jazz. But the end of Rainbow Surprise happens. Celestia's there. Celestia sets this up. Immediately tells something's amiss in the town, which segues into Silent Ponyville 3, which takes place right after Rainbow Surprise. So the first chapter has basically the entire ending of Rainbow Surprise just told from Celestia's point of view. She basically knows that something is really amiss. And so during the night after the wedding, she goes to try and confront it. She uses her magic to try and figure out everything that's going on. However, the other world gets its hands on Celestia and forcibly drags her into the other world and causes the other world to invade Ponyville. So so the other world is not even in the dream world anymore. It's literally invaded reality. And so Twilight wakes up, finds her whole house boarded up. She thinks, oh, it's probably just a prank. She tries to leave. She has the puzzle, and then she finds out that literally all of Ponyville went to shit, and now she has to try and travel through this fog-filled Ponyville, trying to find out what the hell's going on, trying to see if her friends are safe, trying to see if she can save everyone, trying to protect Spike, because Spike has to go with her, and then she eventually sees a sort of like premonition that Spike is if she left Spike in the library, he'll die. And then she eventually starts running into people, and there's lots of, she finds out that there is a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes involving Celestia. Apparently Celestia's been alive a long time, and she's had her fair share of bad memories of sins. And so a sort of unique twist on the whole thing is that instead of, because that's the thing with Silent Hill. Silent Hill preys on like the metaphysical and the thematic elements related to whoever the main character is. So like for example, in Silent Hill 2, Pyramid Head. Everyone knows Pyramid Head. Everyone likes Pyramid Head. He's like the most iconic video game horror character of all time. Pyramid Head represents the main character, James Sutherland's whole need to be punished for his role in his wife's death. I believe in Silent Hill 2, it was revealed that the wife's death, I think, was an accident, and he gets blames himself for it. And Pyramid Head is basically the physical manifestation of his need to get punished for his role. So that's why Pyramid Head is like hunting him, watching him, mentally torturing him, and kind of breaking him down. It's basically meant to be that. And even if you go back to Silent Ponyville, all of the monsters that Pinky comes across are all related to the deep seated trauma that she actually dealt with. For instance, the groaners, the first enemy she comes across, they're all based off the corpses of all the other people that she saw across the cult's area as he was carving up Pinky, not Pinky, Bellamina. There was the ghost filly, which I believe is supposed to represent Bellamina herself, basically dying and her and Pinky forgetting about her. There was a Slender Mane, because of course the fucking Slender Mane. This was 2011. There was of course a lot of horror stuff had to reference Slender Mane. They also had to reference cupcakes a lot. Slender Mane represents Pinky's interpretation of the cult himself. Cupcake's Pinkie Pie is supposed to be the physical manifestation of Pinky's survivor's guilt. Basically, survivor's guilt is basically the whole idea that people are guilt themselves into overcoming a traumatic experience when someone dies as actually surviving that. So basically, Pinky internalized the fact that she survived and her sister died, and that manifested into the Cupcake's Pinkie Pie. And then finally, there was that big pink creature that appears at the end of the story. That's supposed to be Pinky's manifestation of cannibalism as a whole. The whole notion that she basically ate a part unknowingly and unwillingly. Unknowingly, eating a part of Bellamina because she basically wanted a cupcake. She was given a cupcake. She ate it. She didn't realize that it was full of like Bellamina parts. So basically, all of the creatures Pinky occurred in the story are representative of her. However, in Silent Ponyville 3, all the creatures that Twilight runs into are representative of Celestia's psyche. And so I do like the direction the author takes Silent Ponyville 3. Spoiler alert, most of the bulk of this review is going to be focused on 3. And how it deals with a lot of tropes relating to Celestia. I think this is around the time where like the whole Tyrant Celestia sort of deal started. And the author was trying to make Celestia more come off more as like just as infallible, just simply infallible. Like she wasn't really a tyrant. She was at the end of the day still just a mare that would make mistakes and have to deal with traumatic experiences and all that. And I think it's a nice twist on the formula. Like, yeah, I would say Silent Ponyville 3 is more of an experimental sort of deal. A really well done experimental deal, especially in the whole plot structure, where the story is less horror and more an action adventure sort of deal with some horror elements to it. I think, but at the cost at, and what I'm gonna say is gonna sound kind of controversial, but I honestly think the biggest problem, because I've heard that this story is like the controversial one, because the author did have a plan for a Silent Hill Ponyville 4. However, the reception of 3 kind of gave a pause. I don't know why. Uh, but in my opinion, Silent Ponyville 3's biggest flaw is the fact it doesn't really feel like a Silent Hill story. Is it a good story? Yes, Silent Ponyville 3 is a good story. But it's not a good Silent Hill-esque story. It's like It's like what I honestly say about the live action Mario movie. Is the story like if you ask me, it's like, oh, is the live action Mario movie good? Yes, but is it a good Mario movie? No, it's a horrible Mario movie. If you remove the Mario elements, it's like, all right, it's a decent movie. It's nothing too great, but I like it well enough. But as a Mario movie, no, that movie's completely that movie's completely horrible. Same thing with Silent Ponyville 3. It's a really solid, dark, like horror-esque action adventure, but it doesn't feel like a Silent Hill style story. At least to me. This is just my opinion. So when it comes to continuing on with the plot of Silent Ponyville 3, she travels all across parts of Ponyville. She'll eventually come across each of the members of the other of her friends. She runs into Rarity. She runs into Tech kind of sort of runs into Fluttershy and Rainbow. That one's kind of ambiguous on how that was happening. She runs into Applejack, and she eventually, right before the final battle, she runs into Pinky, who's kind of dealt with this. She's dealt with this before. She was like, I'm prepared. I'm prepared. Uh, she also runs into the author of the uh, Mega C Dark Arts, who created the Mind Delve, and she has to leave Spike with him. And there's a lot more emphasis on world building and mystery, because it's not so much someone trying to piece together their own trauma and alter thoughts. This is someone trying to piece together like fragments of someone else's memories and trying to connect it all together to see how it relates to everything going on. I think overall it's good. It's not amazing, but I do think all three of these stories are very much in a sort of connected sort of way, really well done together as a trilogy. And the three side stories are well done too. Except for I'm not a fan of Rainbow Surprise, mainly because this one's like so disconnected from the trilogy that it's kind of its own thing. Like too shy for Rainbow. That's you kind of need to read the story to kind of understand specific. It's not required, but it's like, okay, there is a point to reading the story, and studying the Mind Delve is somewhat important to Silent Ponyville 3, because it kind of gives us a name of the person who made it, and also establishes there's more than what meets the eye and what's going on with the whole thing. Especially since the V in Mega C Dark Art is Vincent, of course it's Vincent, and all that. So, that is the kind of the plot. I didn't want to spoil too much about Ponyville 3, mainly because this one does have a lot of vague. That's kind of also the thing with Silent Hill S stories as well. A lot of them are better actually witnessing for yourself. It helps that a lot of Silent Hill stuff is like really really hard to describe, because of all the metaphysical stuff, and also symbolism and metaphors and all that. It's very hard to describe without trying to simplify it. It is something you kind of have to read for, like, watch or play or read for yourself depending on your medium, because it's so hard to properly describe without trying to spoil what make these stories so good. And also the fact that, death of the author, like everyone coming up with their own interpretation, stuff like that. And so, especially Silent Ponyville 3, they kind of it really does play on the whole. Everyone's going to have a different take on this story, particularly with certain themes and certain elements. And I would say just go, read them yourself. Character wise, we have Pinky, Fluttershy, and Twilight. All three characters, I would say, are really well written. I would say the best one is Twilight, followed by Fluttershy, and followed by Pinkie. Pinkie's obviously the weakest one. I would actually consider Silent Ponyville 1 the weakest of the trilogy, mainly because it's very bare bones. Compared to 2 and 3, this is a very bare bones story that doesn't really offer a lot in the character department. Does have some horror elements. It feels like a Silent Hill s story, but Pinkie's characters is very flat. Uh, Fluttershy's character much better. I really like how she's portrayed as someone who still feels like Fluttershy, but still has that necessary growth of her overcoming everything. Like there's elements as the game goes on, and she's starting to get hurt. She loses the ability to see out of one eye, and she kind of has to, and she gets heavily bandaged. That she's constantly thinking of Rainbow, like what would Rainbow do in this situation? She would keep fighting, so it's like I'm gonna keep fighting for her, and and keep going and pushing myself to find the truth because that's what Rainbow would want. And then you have Twilight. Twilight is a really well written character. She's very basic because at the end of the day, Twilight's character is that of a sort of concerned mother type figure because a lot of her worries is on Spike specifically because she realizes that okay, my friends are probably safe, uh, especially since she kind of figures out that Rainbow, Fluttershy, and Pinkie they kind of dealt with this stuff before, so okay, so I can at least trust them, and Rarity and Applejack are tough enough to survive. Twilight comes off very concerned. It's a very basic character, basically just a concerned mother type figure who wants to go to hell and back to protect her son Spike, but also the fact that she wants to find the truth about Celestia and try and save everyone and try and put a stop to this. I think character is very basic, but basic doesn't mean bad. And I think in this case, it's done really well. I don't have anything really bad to say about Twilight's character. Again, it's really hard to just properly describe Twilight's character because it's just such a basic. There's not really a lot of nuance to her character. What you see is she's just a very protective person who wants to save everyone, who wants to free the town from this, who wants to find Celestia and find the truth. That's There's not a lot of nuance to discuss on her character because it's just a very basic character. And it's the basicness is done very well. Grammar. I don't really have a problem with the in 3. Silent Hill Ponyville 1 and 2, they do have some grammar errors, but there's not a lot. Yeah, there's that. Uh, Pacing wise, all three of these stories are very slow paced. Even one, which is like only 30,000 words, it's very slow. It's very is slow enough pace to kind of get you into the world and get you absorbed into everything that's going on with the plot and the symbolism, but not too fast that it doesn't feel like you're just wasting your time doing nothing. Like with Ponyville 1, this story, despite it being short, it's meant to establish a baseline of what the author wants to do with the world and expand upon that with 2 and 3. That's what this story's role is. And from a pacing standpoint, it works because it's meant to be a very short story. Pinkie's character, it doesn't kind of takes a backseat to this because it's trying to establish anything. And it even, And we do see more Pinky in the other two stories because she does get involved in all three, just in various ways. Kind of show, so you kind of get the character development for her, and across all three stories. In terms of the pacing, I don't know why I went back to characters, but with 2 and 3, they're more slow paced because Fluttershy is a more slow character. So she kind of has to, and there's also more deep introspection of her kind of going back to remembering her past as well as remembering, like, there's lots of parts where there's flashbacks of her talking to Rainbow Dash and all that. And with Twilight, and with 3, it's just a really big story that's meant to try and give as many answers and try and flesh out a really complicated background as best that they can, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that Twilight has to kind of dig up, specifically in regards to Celestia. So there's a lot of slow placed moments where she kind of have to travel. There's lots of big chapters where she has to travel across a big area, and it's full of flashbacks to Celestia kind of getting involved, and she kind of has to figure out connect the dots and everything. I think it's well done. I think the sentence structure is really well done. It's very like, there's not really much bad I can say about all three of these stories. Which leads to what I recommend these stories. Yes, except maybe this. Because don't get me wrong, Rainbow Surprise is well written. It's just, it's not, it's so far removed from the rest of the stories, I can't really recommend it in the same way as I can everything else. Because there is just, this is more of a sequel to this rather than a sequel to this. And that way, yeah, go ahead. If you want to see more lovey-dovey goodness between Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, go ahead, go read the story. It's actually well written. On the whole, all 6 of these stories are really well written. My personal favorite of the 3 is this one because I like what the author did with Fluttershy's character and the background and the imagery and stuff like that. I find Silent Ponyville 1 is actually the weakest because it's so bare bones compared to 2 and 3 that it just kind of feels like, I get what it's trying to. I get what Ponyville 1 is trying to do. It's trying to establish more of a tone rather than anything else. So in that regard, I don't think it's bad. It's just, it's so bereft on a lot of a lot of stuff that made 2 and 3 good, with a lot more tenseness. Doesn't really have, Pinky's probably the weakest character. No, Pinky's definitely the weakest character. The fact that she barely goes anywhere, she doesn't really solve a lot of intricate puzzles. There's not really deep introspection, and with Pinky, you kind of gotta take what you can get. There's just not really a lot of reason to come back to Ponyville 1 compared to, like, I would read 2 and 3 again rather than go back and read 1. Because I know 1 is super massively popular. Like, I know, I'm not going to deny that. Silent Ponyville 1 is a very, very well known and very iconic fan fiction in the My Little Pony fan fiction space. But it's so bereft of a lot of meaningful content compared to 2 and 3 that, despite it still being good, for what it does, for what its role is still good because it still lays the framework out for 2 and 3, and 2 and 3 expand on everything that 1 give us. It's meant to showcase the world itself rather than anything real deep with with Pinky's character or with the plot. It's meant to be a establishment device for the other world, and that's fine. You can have stories that do that if it means you're expanding upon the world as you go along, which did happen. But I still think the story is just enough. Just this story needs an update more than anything else. What would be my favorite parts of the story? I don't really have one. I would probably say maybe Twilight talking to Merlin at the end of 3. Yeah, Merlin's involved in 3. He's more of a background character who kind of appears uh, in the flashbacks with Celestia, but he's a fine character. But yeah, I have to say, hurry, their talk at the end of 3 was I think the best part of the story. What would I change about the story? Uh, I wouldn't really change anything about 3 because I would see 3 as an experiment, as an experiment, and I think it's a really good experiment. It's trying to do something different with the formula, and again, the only issue I have with 3 is the fact it doesn't feel like a Silent Hill story. It's just me. Silent Ponyville 1. I think this story is very long overdue for a remake. It has been over 10. It has been over 10 years, and I honestly think this story I think it's just time. Just I honestly think this story just needs to be rewritten. Just you can leave this version up here, but I think the author probably has practiced enough writing that he can probably go back to the story and go, yeah, I can redo the story, expand upon it even more. Let's do this. Yeah. 2, on the other hand, there is something I would want to change in 2. And this one kind of needs some explanation. So, this one actually takes place in this ending. Face Your Fears. In this ending, which is the true ending, Fluttershy takes Rainbow Dash to Cloudsdale to see her father. Fluttershy confronts her father. Basically, she goes into his room. Lance is still bitter after all these years for Fluttershy murdering her mom. Fluttershy wants to talk to him. However, he slowly walks around the desk, approaches her, has his hoop flipped up, and about to hit her, and lowers it, and asks her to wait. I think that's no. I think I'm doing that out of order. He goes to hit her after she explained the whole thing. Rather out of order. Fluttershy goes to apologize because she never really apologized for her mom's death after all these years, and so wanted to simply apologize, try and give an olive branch. Lance then, no, not Lance, not Fluttershy then goes to say, "I forgive you for all the abuse you gave me." Doesn't make sense. Okay, so here's the thing: doesn't it make sense for Fluttershy's character to do that? Yes, that is very in character of Fluttershy to forgive something like this. It does fit Fluttershy. And I actually have no problems with her forgiving because she has the rationale that if not for the abuse she suffered at his hands, she wouldn't have followed Rainbow Dash to Ponyville. She wouldn't have met Rainbow Dash. She wouldn't have fallen in love with Rainbow Dash. She wouldn't have been involved in all the events of the Elements of Harmony. So in its own weird way, it's like, yeah, he tortured me, but I moved on. I had to learn to move on from it. So I'm willing to at least accept the fact that what he did at the end, it sort of twisted sort of way. I did end up having a very good life, and I end up doing a lot of good things and finding love and all that. So I'm willing to let bygones be bygones and all that. That's not the part I have a problem with. Afterwards, when she ends up enter a conversation with Lance. With Lance offering like we should never see each other again out of fear that some emotions boiling over. Fluttershy takes Rainbow to the hill where they both agree to start dating. Fluttershy tells Rainbow what happened. Well, with what happened with all our abuse and all that. Rainbow, after hearing the whole thing, goes to try and wonder why didn't you report him? Because honestly, that's a realistic question. And this is the problem. This is what I have a problem with. Fluttershy's reasoning for defending the abuse of Lance was he was a doctor. He was protecting everyone, and I didn't want to. And I didn't want anyone to be unnecessarily hurt by him being forced from his position. So basically, Fluttershy's idea is she was worried that if she reported her abuse to Lance, because since Lance was a doctor, he was able to successfully hide all the abuse, and even had the head nurse, Soft Cure, also help them basically hide all the abuse from everyone. Fluttershy's rationale was if she reported the abuse, then that would cause Lance to be fired or be arrested, and nobody else would get treatments from him. And she even brought up a lot of examples of like she saved people who like he saved people that other doctors like given up on. And it's like it's not worth it. And on one hand, yes, just like Fluttershy forgiving her father, it is a very in character thing for Fluttershy to do because she is the element of kindness. On the other hand, that is such a horrible, such a really badly handled excuse. Because it's one thing when to forgive someone of abuse after the fact, because that shows Fluttershy's growth. It's another thing to rationalize and try and defend the abuse in the first place in such a weirdly constructed way that kind of comes off as Stockholm syndrome. That's basically it. It comes off like Fluttershy is suffering from like some mild form of Stockholm, and it's so weird. So the only thing I would do across this entire trilogy is just rewrite that. Like, fine, if you want her to defend the whole thing, I think it could have just been written differently to kind of express the fact that kind of come off less Stockholm. it, it it really comes off as like very unfortunate implications of just Fluttershy internalizing the abuse and trying to and just defend it. Like, oh, like Lance will just storm up to the hill, slap Fluttershy. It's like, no, I deserve it, sort of deal. It's such a bad decision that I just think going back and just rewrite that part. Like, you can still have Fluttershy, say Lance meant a lot of things to a lot of people, but you can also do like you can have like the better excuse like he was still a doctor, or you can even use the excuse that Fluttershy used to her father. It's like, I'm not gonna forgive him for this. But if it wasn't for the abuse, I wouldn't have met you, Rainbow Dash. I wouldn't have come to Ponyville. I wouldn't have gotten involved with the Elements of Harmony. I wouldn't have gotten all this stuff. And you can even pull the lessons like, I told him that I forgive him. I don't also don't forgive him. Like, you can forgive someone and also not forgive them. I know that's a weird conception, but it is possible. Like, you forgive them, but at the same time you don't truly forgive him, because at the end of the day, Lance had a very good reason, twisted as it was, to abuse Fluttershy. He was coming from a a whole the whole idea that she basically murdered his wife, and he was grieving. And he just internalized the grief as wanting to punish Fluttershy for something she actually did, despite the fact she never really. That's also another thing. Um, Lance never got it. I don't think Fluttershy ever told Lance that her mother told Fluttershy to kill her. I think you should also include that in Fluttershy in confronting Lance. But that's it. Hell. You know what? Let's actually do that. You can use Fluttershy explaining Lance's rationale over the whole situation to Rainbow Dash as rationale, saying like, think about it from his point of view. He basically he is a world famous doctor. He has cured numerous people that other doctors forgiven, and he's determined to try and cure his wife. And then all of a sudden he comes in, sees his wife murdered by her daughter. What do you? How do you think he's gonna? Of course he's gonna not gonna take it well. He's gonna. You can say it was just an act, like the dark actions of a guy in grief that just mishandled it. That would have been more realistic. Like, oh, he meant a lot of things to other people. It still would keep in. It still would be true to Fluttershy's character, but also fit the whole idea between the relationship better. As you mean. So that is Silent Ponyville. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and